The Assassin's Creed video game franchise takes players on a thrilling journey through different historical contexts, from the Crusades in Jerusalem to the Viking era in Scandinavia and the Revolutionary War in what would become the United States. At the heart of the franchise lies the centuries-long conflict between the Order of Assassins and the Knights Templar, two shadowy organizations vying for control over the course of history. According to the video games, the Templars are portrayed as the villains, an evil order that seeks to subjugate the masses in order to maintain social control, believing that this is the only way to achieve peace. In contrast, the Assassins believe that freedom is the ultimate path to creating a peaceful society. They use violence as a means to an end, but only to protect their ideals and the greater good. But how much of this rivalry between the two orders is actually based on historical fact? While the video game franchise takes artistic liberties with the portrayal of the Templars and Assassins, the real-life historical context in which these organizations existed was far more nuanced and complex. The historical Knights Templar was a religious order that emerged in the 12th century during the Crusades. They were known for their military prowess and became one of the most powerful and influential organizations of the time. However, they also engaged in banking and finance, which brought them into conflict with various monarchies and the church. Accusations of heresy and corruption led to the suppression of the order in the early 14th century. The Assassins, on the other hand, were a secretive group of Shia Muslims who operated in the Middle East during the 11th and 12th centuries. They were known for their targeted assassinations of political and religious figures, but also had a complex ideology that emphasized personal freedom and the rejection of oppressive authority. While the video game franchise takes creative liberties with the historical context of the Templars and Assassins, it does capture the essence of their rivalry and the larger themes of freedom versus control, which continue to resonate with audiences today. The assassination attempts on Saladin, the great Muslim commander who fought against the Christian Crusaders, were orchestrated by Rashid al-Din Sinan, the chief of the Nizari assassins. Under Sinan's leadership, the assassins experienced a kind of renaissance, and he became known as the Old Man of the Mountain, a puppet master in the art of targeted assassination. Sinan was a shrewd leader who created a cult of personality around himself. He would initiate his followers through a bacchanalian ceremony that included all kinds of illicit substances, women, and other indulgences. Sinan promised that these pleasures awaited his followers once their suicide missions were complete. Sinan had been fighting with Saladin's predecessor, Nur-ud-Din, for a while before proposing an alliance with the Christian king of Jerusalem, Amalric, against the Sunni Muslims who had their sights set on retaking Jerusalem. However, during negotiations near Tripoli, the Nizari contingent was attacked and slain by Templar knights under the orders of their Grand Master, Odo de Saint-Amand. King Amalric was outraged by the attack and demanded that the knights be turned over to his men. However, Sinan refused, telling the king that only the Pope had the right to tell them what to do. The event turned Sinan and the Nizari against the Christians, and they were now fighting a dual front against other Muslims and Christians. It seemed that even the Christians couldn't get along, plagued by infighting and backroom dealings. 3 years later, in 1176, Saladin was at the gates of the Nizari fortress Masyaf, after a long siege. Despite the assassination attempts, Saladin saw the Nizari as a youthful ally, and the two came to a truce. They would now work together against the Templars and the Christians as they sought to take back the Holy Land. The Battle of Montgisard in 1177 is considered one of the Templars' most famous victories. In this battle, 500 Templars led a small army of Crusaders against Saladin's much larger force of 26,000 soldiers. While there is no record of it, some historians speculate that assassins may have fought alongside Saladin's army due to the alliance between Saladin and the Nizari chief, Sinan. But in 1187, Saladin had the last laugh when he took control of Jerusalem, reportedly offering King Guy of Lusignan and his men sherbet while they were held captive. After his victory, Saladin ransomed back King Guy and other Christian prisoners, but the Templars were considered too fanatical, and every captured Templar was executed. Saladin would continue to fight off Christian incursions, including during the Third Crusade from 1189 to 1192. Meanwhile, Sinan and the Nizari worked behind the scenes, taking out various leaders from both Christian and Muslim factions. By 1192, both Saladin and Sinan had passed away after decades of ruling, experiencing both defeats and victories, as well as complex relationships. The historical backdrop of the Assassin's Creed video games is surprisingly accurate. The Assassins themselves were a real group that existed in the past. In fact, the Nizari Ismailis, who captured a string of fortresses in the Persian mountains and were known for their targeted hits on influential leaders, had a significant influence on regional politics in the 11th century. This particular branch of Shia Islam was considered heretical by most other Muslim sects and had a hierarchical organizational structure with the Imam. The Nizari believed that the Imam was the true successor of the Prophet Muhammad. Below the Imam were the great dais and ordinary dais, who acted as missionaries for the group. Within the order of the Assassins, these three titles comprised the elite class. Underneath the elite class were the worker bees, the Rafiq, the Lasik, and the Fidai. The latter title, translating literally to one who summons, referred to the assassins who did the dirty work. The Templars, on the other hand, had a similar organizational structure with three classes of elites: the Grand Master, the Grand Prior, and the Prior, and three classes of worker bees: knights, esquires, and lay brethren. It is even rumored that the Templars were directly influenced by the Nizari. Both groups had similar uniforms as well, with a red symbol on white cloth. The Templars, founded in 1119 by a Frenchman named Hugues de Payens, were religious warriors who swore devotion to the Pope and took monastic vows. Their primary purpose was to protect Christian pilgrims in Jerusalem. While the Templars and Assassins had their differences, their organizational structures. Although at first glance, the Templars and the Assassins seem to be two completely different groups, a closer look reveals some intriguing similarities. For one, both the Templars and the Nizari Assassins had a common enemy: Saladin. While the Assassins did target Christians on occasion, they had a much longer and darker history of fighting other Muslims. In certain situations, they even saw the Christian Crusaders as potential allies in their struggle against other Muslim groups who had opposed them for years. Saladin, a Sunni Muslim who helped unite the Muslim world against the Crusaders, was a particular thorn in the side of the Assassins. In 1187, he took Jerusalem back from the Christians, ending the Second Crusade. Although history remembers Saladin for uniting the Muslims, there was one group of Muslims that was very much not a part of that union: the Assassins. The Nizari, a Shia sect, tried multiple times to assassinate Saladin. The first attempt came in 1175 during Saladin's siege of Aleppo, while he was conquering then Shia-dominated Syria. Deep religious animosity existed between the two groups, and several assassins snuck into the Aleppo camp, one night armed and dangerous. However, they were killed before they could reach the Sultan. A year later, they tried again, this time dressing up as soldiers in Saladin's army as it besieged another Syrian city. This time, the assassins managed to get close to Saladin, but he was wearing armor and managed to survive. After the failed assassination attempts, Saladin's security measures intensified substantially. He now knew who the assassins were and turned his attention towards one of their most important fortresses, the fortresses of Masyaf. The Crusades were a time of great upheaval and conflict, with the Christians and Muslims fighting bitterly for control of the Holy Land. Despite their differences, the Templars and the Assassins had one common enemy: Saladin, the Sunni Muslim who united the Muslim world against the Crusaders. While Saladin is remembered as a hero for his efforts, the Assassins, a Shia sect, saw him as an enemy and made several attempts to take him out. The assassins' first attempt came in 1175, during Saladin's siege of Aleppo, where they tried to sneak into his camp to kill him, but were killed before they could get to him. The second attempt came a year later when the assassins dressed up as soldiers in Saladin's army and managed to get to him, but he survived the attempt. From that point on, Saladin ramped up security, and the assassins became enemies of the Muslim world. The Christian Crusaders suffered heavy losses over the next 100 years, resulting in the loss of all their strongholds by 1291. In a last-ditch effort, Pope Innocent tried to ally with the Mongols, who had just entered Persia, but the alliance never materialized. By 1271, the last Nazari fort was destroyed, and the Order of Assassins was scattered. Despite rumors that the Knights Templar remained intact and influential, their power was shattered, and the order was disbanded. Nevertheless, their legacy lives on, and connections have been made to the Masons. History is filled with incredible stories and fascinating characters, and we hope you enjoy this video. So, what do you think? Were the Knights Templar the good guys or the bad guys? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching Time Capsule.